So our first speakers tonight are going to be Agnes and Judith from the Association 2040. You can now share your presentation by talking and introducing you. And they founded the association with the purpose of drawing the attention of people living in Budaörs to the importance of the built environment. And they organize built environment education programs such as summer classes, city walks, summer camps, and they shake up the community through informal and architecture-related events. And today they show us how they adapted the frightening SWOT analysis method for children to activate discussion with them about their environment and its pros and cons. So please, Agnes and Judith, the floor is yours.
Now, welcome everybody. My name is Agnes Wirth, and I will present you our association, our works and events with kids since 2014. We live in Budaörs. Our city has a special state because it's right next to Budapest. From several aspects, it's very favorable, but many times it makes local initiatives harder. We had a dream to make a community through architecture. It shows well that it's a local association. There's the 6 couples who were the founders met in our children's kindergarten. So we organized exhibitions and events for adults, but we and our guests had many children, so we had to do something for them. We are architects, so we made games with the structures, materials, colors, and with the city, of course. Now we have a very good connection with our children's school. They invited us to organize exhibitions in the school, and we made presentations about architecture. Children were very open, and we liked these events with the kids very much. Meanwhile, we were inspired by the Kultúraktív's city guidebooks, and we created our own workbook about Budaörs. We began the work with 4 classes, and we use this book since then with the new generations. With this workbook, we usually make 3 walks in Budaörs and show 3 distinct parts of the city. Our plan works. Kids like investigation tasks, drawing tasks, and they get to know Budaörs playfully. Last summer, we made an architecture camp for the age from 10 to 12. It was our very first camp. We were excited. How can we work with 20 kids for a whole week? We are architects, not teachers. For each day, we had a theme. For example, materials, structures, space and mass, special buildings like labyrinth, tower or bridge. And the last day was about our city. It was amazing. The framework and the rules were not too hard. And when we saw them tired, we gave them time to play free. It was fantastic to see that they arrived every morning earlier and earlier to have much more time to build from the paper cubes and from Kapla. We realized that our mission is to attract children's attention to the built environment and their own city. This is the first step, and we hope that the city management would take into account the kids' dreams about Budaörs someday. It was a very short presentation about our 8 years, and now Judith speaks about our experiment with the SWOT analysis. Enjoy.
So you already know a lot about us, but the purpose of today's webinar is to focus on prioritization in urban planning with children. For this prioritization, we have used SWOT analysis, which is a framework that helps us to find out the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats in a project. It is a very clear method, and it can be pretty helpful in city planning, but it sounds very complicated and frightening, I know. But after you see it clearly, it's a magical tool, you will see it. We were doing a SWOT analysis with children between the age of 8 and 12. We have invited them to a city, in a hall where our exhibition was presented. It was in Budaörs, in our hometown, and our exhibition was about the SWOT of our hometown, Budaörs. The children were very excited, and first we have explained them the whole exhibition. The exhibition was presented in 4 different walls with the 4 different topics, with a lot of pictures, lot of explanations. We have also showed them some videos about the city, about the future, about the past of the city. They could study the huge aerial photo of the city on the floor and find their favorite places on it. Their home, their way as they go home from the school, their favorite place to have excursion, and they enjoyed it very much. After we were focusing on the exhibition, and they could complete our ideas and thoughts with their own ideas, writing on or drawing it on post-it stamps. But you know, if you work with children, you have to be very tricky. You can't ask them what are the strengths or weaknesses of your town, because they won't understand a word of it. So we had to translate these questions into their language. So when we wanted to ask them about the strengths of the city, we had to ask, what do you like in your town? Or what is your favorite place in your town? Or if you would have a special visitor, where would you take him or her in your town? Or please draw your favorite experience in your town. Or why is your city admirable? If you would ask them about the weaknesses of the city, you should ask, which part of your city would you avoid going to? Or is there anything in your city what you are ashamed of? Or is there anything that you are missing in your town? If you had a magic wand, what would you change in your city? About the opportunities, you have to ask, how would you develop your city? What would you change first if you would be the mayor of your city? Or do you have any idea what could make your city more famous? And about the threats, you have to ask, what would be a dangerous change in your city? What do you think? Or if you imagine the future of your city, is there anything you don't want to see happening? Or is there anything you are afraid of that it happens to your city in the future? And after these questions, they answer what you want to know. So it was a great experience working with them. and we have learned a lot of during this working together. Thank you for your attention. And I hope that you will join us in our workshop in Hungarian language after the presentations.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I absolutely love the guiding questions that you proposed. I think it also makes me much easier to understand the SWOT analysis. And as you said, after the inspirational talks, you will meet Judith and Agnes to go deeper into the SWOT analysis method, and you can also test out how it works on the language of the children. And now we will jump quickly to the next presentation. Barbara, if you wish to start sharing your screen now, that would be lovely. As our second speaker is Barbara Feller from Vienna. And Barbara is a Magister and Doctor of Philosophy and studied History and Pedagogy at the University of Vienna. She is director of the Austrian Architectural Foundation and is the advisory architect at the OEAD GmbH. She is the chairwoman of the BINC, which is the initiative Built Environment Education for Young People, and member of the Baukultur Board at the Federal Ministry of Culture. Her expert field is in built environment education for children and youth, and living cities in the 20th and 21st century. So Barbara's presentation focuses on Austrian projects and initiatives and their cooperation. And both in the presentation and the workshop, she's going to talk about Stadtplanspiel, showing a playful way about how consensual decisions can be made with children. Barbara, please start your presentation.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And in my lecture and also in the workshop afterwards, I will give an impression why I think built environment education is important. And I will show how we are dealing with this topic in Austria, especially with children and young person. And I will start, okay. And I will start with this picture. Most of you perhaps know this is St. Stephen Cathedral in the city center of Vienna. And this is the picture to come Googling architecture in Vienna. And this is one example. I think this works for every city. When people are thinking about architecture, they mostly think about old buildings, about high buildings, and about buildings which are in some kind of touristical interest. It can be also new buildings like the Bilbao Museum, but nobody will think about architecture looking at this picture. And this is the street where I live in Vienna. It's a quite nice neighborhood. Not so nice in these dark February days, but you see there are trees and this is a quite normal street. But nobody is thinking about architecture looking at an environment like this. But I go to St. Stephen Cathedral once a year and I live here every day. And so I think it's very important to have an impression about the daily quality of the daily life, about the houses, about the free space, about the planning. And even at this picture, nobody thinks about design, but we have to aware that most of our life we are in designed environments. And this is very important to draw the attention on these topics where we live in. And to open the eyes, in Austria, some colleagues, some years ago, we made a series of postcards called Holiday Greetings from Austria. This was a series of 9 postcards. I will show you some of them. And we put the finger in the problems with these postcards. And these postcards we sent to the relevant politicians on the level of the high level, on the federal states, and on the level of the small cities, to show where the problems are. And this is one problem, the scaleration of the ground floors, where nobody can, these are dead eyes. So this is a problem of living environment. And you see that for the city and also for the country, it's very important to have 3 places where life can be. And in this scenery, life is dead. And the scaleration of the ground floors and the loss of shops and so on is another problem in the big shopping areas where you have no natural soil, and soil is something that is not that is endless. And so it's very important to be aware how we live, and that my personal living style is very important for the environment and for the well-being of the society. And also this is one problem which we have in Austria, and I think in other countries as well. Most people have the dream to live in a single family house with garden and with green. And you see there is nobody living, and you have 3 places for the cars. And even if this house is very sustainable, the living in this environment is not sustainable at all, because you have to take your car even if you want to buy a bread or something like that. And I will finish this series why I think it's important that we have an idea about built environment education. I will show that mostly everybody has a clear idea what type of car he or she wants, what color, how much horsepower, but only few people know their needs, how they want to live. And so I think it's very important that we give an impression how to be involved, what's good for me personally, but also what is good for the society. And here in Austria, it's not important that you look at this picture in detail. I will show that we have a lot of institutions and persons dealing with this topic of Baukultur. We have the Chamber of Architects, we have Houses of Architecture, and we have here this initiative, Built Environment Education for Young Person, where we are all over the country, from far west, like Vorarlberger Architekturinstitut, to far east in Burgenland, which is on the border to Hungary. And these are institutions like universities, small institutions dealing with built environment education, and other some single persons in small countries, on the small countryside. And we have all the topic, we are dealing with this topic, built environment education. And how we are doing this, I will show some of our common activities. We have a common website where we can announce all our initiatives, where you find teaching material, you have literature and web links. We have some information for our projects, which I will show you briefly. And we have current initiatives. We have something, all our projects, and you can find here information. We developed some teaching materials, which we called Baukultur Kompass. This is a series of 8 booklets. They are very small. And in each booklet, there are 5 modules which can be easily integrated into the school curriculum. And they are dealing with the most relevant topics of built environment education. This is free space, living, old and new, constructions, participation, material, atmosphere, and regional planning. We have, for 4 times, we have been at the Venice Architectural Biennale, and we wanted to be there also last year, but you know, Corona and so on. We made there workshops and lectures in the garden of the Giardini, and with children from Austria, from Slovenia, from Germany. We did a lot of projects in Venice, and we hope that when the Architectural Biennale will take place, we will do another activity at Venice. Every autumn, we are doing this Technology Moves Week, Technik bewegt, where architects and engineers go to school and speak to the children about their work, and they are doing then together some kind of workshop of constructing or something like that. And we developed some plays, the Stadtplanspiel, which will be also the starting point for the workshop afterwards. And the Stadtplanspiel is a role play where this can be done by up to 30 persons. And it shows that everybody can be involved in the process of city and region planning. It makes visible different needs of different groups. Goal of the play is to find a solution which fits the different needs and is satisfactory for all. We think that Baukultur is more than nice buildings. Look back to this street where I live, it's not so nice buildings. But it's also about the processes and about speaking, participating, defining values, and realizing them. We developed this play together with pupils of age of 13 and 14 and did it many times, not only with pupils, but also with responsibles for city and regional planning in the administration. And as this play takes 3 or 4 hours, we developed a smaller version, which we made with different groups and which will be also the basis of my workshop afterwards. And for the common work, I will say at the end some how we are doing this. We are doing 1 or 2 day working meetings every year to discuss all our projects. So we are 15 to 20 persons. And each of these projects has a project leader. And very necessary is respect and appreciation for the work of the others. Very necessary is a good network and communication and engagement and honorary work. And at the end, I will say some objectives, which I think, which are for me important for my work of built environment education. It's very necessary helping people to see, because only what you see can you recognize. And then it's necessary to learn to speak about, so you can have to find the real words to discuss with others, and so for that to become decision capable. And I think that we all are responsible for our living environment, and the living environment has a direct impact on us. We scape the landscape, but then the landscape or the houses, but then they scape us. So this is a both relation. And when you're speaking to architects, it's not the uncritical acceptance of predefined aesthetic, but it's the ability to perceive architecture in its diversity. So I don't want that after a workshop, every children say, oh, this is a good house and this is a bad house. So it's necessary to know what is good for me and what is good for the others. It's very important to bring built environment education into school, because this is a place where every children where every child is, because when we are doing workshops in the architectural houses or like this, there come only children where the parents are interested in this topic. But in the school, everybody can get in touch. And so I think the school is a very, very important partner. And the result of built environment education should not be the output of little architects. So not everybody has to become an architect, but it should rather produce a basic interest in the environment. And you can imagine with these ideas, for me, architecture is not part, is also part, but not only part of aesthetics, but it's more than part of ethics. And so I think it's not only art in school curriculum, but rather interdisciplinary with an impact on different subjects. And the children can learn what is the role of architects, engineers, landscapes planners for the society, and to see this broad variety of importance of these technical professions for the daily life. And working with children, you see, you can improve other skills than the normal school life. And so children who are not so good in the school can here improve other skills and can become more fit, that they have also other criteria which are necessary for the daily life. Yes, and the outlook to the workshop, I said this just before, and so I will stop with this, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for your presentation. I really appreciate that you pinpointed the importance of finding words and our voice in participation. I think this is one of the hardest challenges. And I can't wait to try your role-playing game in your workshop. Consensus is also one of the hardest in design. So if, dear audience, if you wish to exchange thoughts with Barbara and try Planspiel in the workshop, then note her workshop for yourself. And now we quickly jump to our third speaker, who is Dr. Marta Brockowicz-Dodig. She is a Belgrade and Berlin-based architect, assistant professor in architecture at the Union University Nikola Tesla in Belgrade, Serbia. And she is the founding director of the NGO AR Cubator. She was an Alexander von Humboldt postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Urban Design and Urban Development at the TU Berlin, Germany, researching built environment education for children. Her additional research interest includes games in architecture and urban planning, sustainable schools, learning environment design, and spatial pedagogy. She is also co-editor of the Routledge book on games in architecture and urban planning. And her presentation will be about games as co-design tools with children. And she introduces us to the magical world of games. She presents the tools for teaching, research and design tools in architecture and urban planning. And she will explain also details about her school visioning game. Marta, the floor is yours.
The microphone is mine. Good evening, everyone. Anna, thank you for such a lovely introduction. I really don't think that I should be adding anything else. And I think I would use the time to go straight into the presentation. So as Anna said, tonight I will be speaking about the games, especially games as co-design tools with children. And I can add on to what our first speaker said, how I came about to using actually games with children. It was, I think now more than 10 years ago. I started my PhD. I wanted to consult children on the quality of learning spaces, as well as involve them in one school redesign project in my home country, Serbia, in Belgrade. And of course, as the first speaker said, it was absolutely impossible to involve children and tell them, okay, today we're going to speak about the spatial qualities of the learning environment you inhabit on a daily basis, or something like this. So it was completely clear to me that I need to find a tool that's going to be very understandable, very accessible, and also very fun for kids, because if to all of you, but I believe many of you indeed work with children, and if you really want to come to some good quality information, usually it cannot be like 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, there's some very good engagement formats that are very quick, but if you really want to sit with the kids, understand the communal situation in which, for example, the school is, what are the problems, usually it cannot happen that quickly. And this is why I decided to use games. Since then I'm using them for many different both teaching, design, and research endeavors in architecture and urban planning, and not just with children. This is why I always choose this sentence when I start speaking about the games, because from then until today, I really believe that game can be a particular way of looking at something, or as Clark C. Abt said, anything. I structured the presentation in a way that people who might try tomorrow to design their own presentation have enough information, as well as inspiration how they can do it. So the first part, this introductory part through a lecture, is going to be based on that, so providing information, and then through the workshop I will go step by step through the game I developed and that I used and am using, and we will also try to play with its, although it's very long and complex, we're going to try to play with it a bit. So when we speak about the games today in architecture and urban planning, they're completely not a recent phenomenon. So we have one great book that's called Die Welt im Spiel, or The World in a Game, and the book is created by Ernst Strohal. It's from 2015, and this book collects and demonstrates games that have been used since the late 17th century as a means of exploring distant cities, faraway lands, exotic countries, as well as fantasy worlds. So this game, I believe, exemplifies that this book shows that games can be ways of traveling through space and time. And it's filled with so many interesting examples, and I really believe that if someone is interested in using games, this could be a very good starting point. If we're speaking about our more recent history, about 60s and 70s, then we have two of the most prominent figures. So one is Professor Richard D. Duke. I think he's still Professor Emeritus at the University of Michigan, as well as Henry Sanoff, who is now Professor Emeritus at the North Carolina State University. Both of them brought games into the urban planning arena, as well as in university context. And usually we consider their work as the starting point for all the recent developments in the design methodology of simulations and gaming. Richard Duke's very famous book, it's called Gaming the Future's Language. And in this book, he presents games, as he calls them, as a multi-log communication format. Or in other words, I'm quoting him, he says that there are multiple simultaneous dialogues in a carefully structured environment. In the 70s, very important figure is Henry Sanoff. And also through his work, I think he's quite, not as he used to be, but he's quite active today. He developed, employed, and evaluated games, and he also established them as effective tools for participatory design. And one of his books, very old one, but I still think today very good one, that's called Design Games, presents an array of environmental games. He, in this book, discusses their rules, concept, methods, And in this way provides a much needed guide for both architects, urban planners, landscape architects on how to use games with children as well. And he's very significant because he's one of the first to start using games with children. Since the conception, if I can say it like this, of the field until present days, we have so many games that have been developed and used. And when we look at a field such as architecture, urban planning, landscape planning, we see three distinctive fields, but they're of course very often overlapping. So games can be used as a teaching tools, as design or co-design tools at offices, architecture offices, but they could be also used as research tools. And what is very interesting is that very often in the practice, you can see that some of the games have dual or even triple purposes. For example, the game that I will be presenting in the workshop, the game that I have been developing, the situation was like this, that the game, in order to be played fully, it occupies 2 days or 3 hours on 2 days. When you go into a school, in my case, and when you want to take so much time, or so much of children's and teachers' time, it has to have some kind of educational benefit. So I developed the game in a way that for us architects, I'm primarily an architect, so this is why I say us architects, it is a post-occupancy tool, but for kids, it's built environment educational tool for learning, for teaching and learning about sustainability aspects of their school. So this is why sometimes these games can have dual or even triple purposes. When we are speaking about co-design tools, games as co-design tools, they have been used the most as a tools for the topic we're speaking. So visioning with children, finding consensus with children on different topics. And they have been defined as meaningful involvements for broader public, for non-designers, but for users as well. And it usually happens through a precisely defined set of playing rules, and they're carried out with a set of tangible game pieces. So usually when you design game, you have simultaneously to think about these three topics. Games are very good because they rest on a democratic premise, and when they are well designed, they can support quite well democratic processes because they invite participation, they support decision-making, compromising. Games can encourage collaboration and also reward participation. And when we are speaking about the children, this is very important because I am completely sure that you all are aware of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, that states that children need to be consulted on all the matters that impact their life, and built environment included. I'm going to present you, so this is not super dry, one game that I like very much. I think it's very good, and it hasn't been developed by me, it has been developed by the Baupiloten. Some of you have certainly heard about them. So first they emerged as a very experimental teaching and design unit at the TU Berlin, but today they exist only as an architecture office. They have been involved quite a lot with work with school, especially renovating schools, and I think through the ages they developed this game that they use quite often. The game is called School Vision Game, or Our Perfect Learning Landscape. And this game is really good because it allows diverse audience to sit at the same table and perform independent needs assessment in a participatory fashion. It can bring together users to playfully explore their needs, communicate them, which I think is very important, with local administration, with local authorities. And as end result, this game is there to produce a spatial pedagogical program for a school. And I know that we don't have quite a lot of time, but I'm just going to tell you a few steps how the game is played. So basically a game consists of many different printed elements. And on the first game on the top, you see there are different activity cards that are put in the circles, and there are also different kind of atmospheric cards. They're put into the triangle. So basically, when you start with conceptualizing different spaces that could be, they don't just have to be in a school. I think this game, I know because the first version of the game we have used for many different purposes when I was working with the Baupiloten. So basically, you start grouping the activities with the atmospheres. Of course, it's happening through a discussion. On the second picture, I don't know whether you see there are different lines and circles that allow you to group the activities into specific areas. With the lines, connect the areas that should be connected, and so on. At the very end, you get something like this, the spatial pedagogical plan that's showing you what's the heart of the learning landscape, what are the subordinate activities, in which spaces they should be, what kind of atmospheres the users expect there, who should be using these spaces, and so on and so on. So I will stop here. I will use the workshop to hear the questions if you have, and also we will go through one game specifically designed for children step by step. So then until workshop.
Thank you so much, Marta. I absolutely loved that you put the games on the map of co-design. And I think it's very important to highlight that that learning goals go hand in hand with the goal of changing the environment when we work with children and young people. So beautifully said. And I really recommend everyone who's interested in games to visit Marta's workshop and try to build step by step this kind of game with Marta. And also, if you have questions to her, please visit her workshop.